Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Sharon Saline and welcome to our Attitude Live today. It's Friday, July 21st. I'm so excited to be here as usual. We're going to be talking about how to manage yourself when you are dysregulated and upset so that you can show up and be available to your children. I'd love it if you would let me know where you're from so that I can greet you. I love to welcome people and say hi. And then we'll get started in a few minutes on the actual content of today's presentation. I'd like to know if you can hear me and if you can see me, so that would be great. So I have Elizabeth, howdy from Louisiana. Yay! Thank you, Elizabeth. You're the first one. And Tasha from Saskatoon. And Lisa, Nicole from Ottawa, and Deb. It's nice to see you. I have a couple people that have a tiny URL, so I'm not sure what that means. Hi, Julie from Texas, and Deborah Compton from North Carolina. Excuse me. Hello, Rachel from Washington, and Katie and Nick. Janet from South Africa. Wow. Kathleen and Elizabeth. Kim from Sweden. It's so wonderful to have all of you here. I'm really excited about that. So today we're going to talk about a topic that is actually pretty near and dear to my heart, which is how to manage yourself so that you can show up and be available for your kids when they themselves feel dysregulated. And this is something that I'm definitely challenged with, and I'm eager to hear how you manage some of your challenges with this. So let's get started. I do want to greet a few more people before that I do that. Hillary and Tracy, hello. Denise, Galen, and Lou from Belgium, and you're in France. Bonsoir à toi. Catherine from Montreal, bonsoir aussi, and Sharon from Canada. Love your name. So we know, of course, that having arguments with our kids is never easy, and that these disagreements are often disruptive and hurtful to everybody, leaving painful memories often marked by regret. Everybody gets carried away, and suddenly, boy, this escalating dynamic turns into a raging bonfire. I've certainly lost it with my kids over the years, and with my husband. And I wish I had better tools to make different choices at the moment. In fact, many families whose kids may be either neurotypical or neurodivergent often go down these paths of emotional dysregulation and struggle with impulse control, particularly when they are upset. So let's start with some comments, some conversation. What triggers you about your child? What does your child do that really sets you off? And what about in other areas of your life? Like what things that happen particularly as a parent trigger you, and what things might happen outside of parenting, at work or in friendship, or as a child yourself with your own parents, or as a partner? So let me know some answers to these. So what are your triggers maybe with your children, if you have them, and what are your triggers in other areas of your life? And Lori says disrespect from students. So Lori, I want to look back, but I'm guessing that you're an educator and that disrespect is really difficult. Let me see. Hi, Linda. Your kid's low emotional intelligence. And you interact with teenage students daily for 9 months. Okay, so you are a teacher. And Robin, if you can let me know what you mean by your kid's low EQ, excuse me. There's a big difference, of course, EQ, because EQ kind of develops and changes over time. Karen says when siblings physically hurt one another. So it's really important for you to be able to identify the things that kind of get you riled up, because then we will talk about how to detect the signs that's happening, and what you can do to sort of manage yourself first. So Kara says, my son is autistic and he's always aggressive and angry. It triggers me. That is a challenge to live with, Kara. I hear that. And Kathleen says, I have a preteen and lately it's the attitude side. Oh yeah. That comes along with being a preteen. I guess I would say buckle up and put on your Teflon suit. I used to say to my preteen, fresh is for vegetables. And literally, they would roll their eyes at me like, oh, Mom. But I was like, yep, fresh is for vegetables. And I would just say that over and over so I wouldn't get, sucked in. Let's see, Kate says demand avoidance, teen arguing about doing chores and attitude, interruptions in conversations, not listening, yes. Tasha, you can be impatient, you're a single parent, your son is autistic and ADHD. I love that, AUDHD. That's fantastic, Tasha. I've never seen that, so I'm so glad you introduced that to me. Let's see. Brittany, my son is autistic and has ODD as well. The defiance is the hard part. Yep. Catherine, giving too much of myself and kids demanding more of me when they are more independent. Yep, so they sort of regress a little bit at home and they want you to do stuff for them that that they could do for themselves, but they want mom to do it. Inga says, impulsive behavior that leads to continuous overstepping of boundaries and disrespecting rules. Linda, my son has ADHD and has trouble controlling anger and his impatience with others. Nick, fresh is for vegetables. Love that. Thank you, Nick. I have a few others if you want, but that's one of my favorites. Alexis, when we are trying to stick to a routine and my kids act like the routine is completely new and it's the same every night, I'm only laughing because it's so true. It's like, oh, wait, I have to take a bath before I go to bed? Whoa, wait, I have to put my dirty clothes in the hamper? Wow, who knew? I'm like, of course you knew. We do it every night. So it's like it hasn't, the routine kind of hasn't been passed down the memory line into the long-term memory that they can actually rely on it and do it over and over. Okay, Thibodeau, when my daughter lies to me, that's a big trigger for me, lying, and not taking responsibility for her actions. Snap on that. When my mom listens to my 16-year-old daughter that lies to her on her 13-year-old sister who has autism and ADHD. That's a very complicated dynamic, particularly if the grandparent believes the older child, and if the grandparent might have some issues with the younger sister who is AUDHD. When they're too chatty and they don't read each other's cues, and when he has difficulty falling in line, yes. Okay, I hear all of that, and we're going to get into some of the specifics. But we know that that understanding the biology of an upset can really assist you in responding more effectively and making alternative choices to your own reactivity. So for me, if you're lying to me, I'm like, you can start to see the steam coming out of my ears. In fact, one time when my younger child was in high school, my husband and I had gone out to dinner, and we made sure that we would come home on the weekends, before 9 when all the activity started, but we weren't home early enough. And we got home, and there on the counter in the kitchen was an empty hard cider, which, had to have been taken from our hard cider collection downstairs in our basement. And I looked and I said, this is interesting. What's up with this hard cider? And my daughter and her friend said, we don't know. We have no idea how it got there. And I took one look at my husband, and he motioned for me to go upstairs. So I went upstairs because I knew I was going to completely lose it. Because of course they drank the hard cider. So I went upstairs, I put on some music, I stomped around a little bit, and then he came up and we talked about it, and we decided that we would wait until the next day. And the next day, my daughter woke up, came downstairs. We were having I think it was, 11. And um, uh, we sort of waited, and then at some point my husband said, we'd like to talk to you about what happened last night. And we sat down at the table, and they looked at us and they were like, yep, we drank the hard cider. I'm just going to start with that. We drank the hard cider. And I thought, so glad that I waited instead of losing my crackers last night, which would have created a whole, event and a lot of defensiveness, that they could sit with the fact that we knew that they drank that, but they didn't say anything. Because ideally, some kids know they lie. They can see that they're caught in their lie. And what we would want is for them to come forward and say, guess what? This is the truth. There are many kids with ADHD or who are on the spectrum or who are on the spectrum, and those who have oppositional defiant disorder who will not come clean. And so what we want to do in those moments is give them an opportunity. So you wait to see if they can come clean, and the next day, if they have not come clean, the conversation can be really kind of from a scientific point of view. So I'm so curious about how that hard cider bottle ended up on the kitchen counter when Dad and I weren't here to drink it. I'm so curious about that. And then you wait, we wait, because we want to see if they're able to. And Laura, you make a good point here, which is they cannot or they're unable to. So that's an interesting question, because I feel like sometimes it's not necessarily a willpower issue. It's a, oops, I got caught. If I pretend that it never happened, maybe you'll believe me in my magical thinking and see, I know that you know, and I'm ashamed that I lied to you. I was impulsive, and I don't actually know what to do about that or how to talk about it. So I'm going to get angry at you instead of holding on to, myself and being accountable. And so, we want to really be aware of these things as a parent, to expect that this will happen, that our kids will, at times exaggerate the truth, or perhaps avoid telling the truth. A lot of kids with ADHD think avoidance is not lying, particularly about something they've done, when avoidance is absolutely a form of lying. So we want to sort of set the record straight, and the way that we're going to do that is by being honest ourselves. Like, if you do something that was not a good choice, not your best choice, not the self you want to be, own it, apologize for it, and then wrap it up and put it away. This learning how to sort of be able to be accountable for things that you do and not be afraid that something terrible is going to happen because you've done that, is something that is a developmental sort of path, because a lot of kids expect that if they are playing ball in the house, and they're not supposed to play ball in the house, and they knock over a lamp and they break it, that they're going to get in big trouble. So I'm not going to tell you that I broke the lamp. I'm just going to say, whoa, the lamp is broken. I'm not sure how that happened, right? And what they don't understand is that actually by avoiding revealing what occurred, or actually flat out, lying and denying what happened, the consequences are much greater, because we want to live in a family where there is trust, and that trust goes both ways. So if you are doing something, or you do something that upsets your kid or isn't fair, or you yourself, Nick says he's running out of crackers to lose your crackers, it's reasonable to say, you know what, that was not my best parenting moment. I apologize for yelling. Now, one of the things that I've done in the past, which I've worked really hard to change because my kids hate it, is I'll over apologize when I do something. So I'll say I'm sorry, and they're still like, Mom, you're the worst. And I'm like, and that has to do with my own sort of rejection sensitivity. It's like, I've apologized, I want you to forgive me this moment, and then we can move on. Sometimes your kids may do that with you. They'll be like, okay, Mom, I'm sorry, can we move on? And, I'm sorry is not like something that you yell. Sorry is an apology is something that you give with your whole self. And sometimes it includes making amends. So let me talk a little bit more about this. So when we understand the biology of an upset, it can help us, because when people become angry or agitated, the emotional parts of our brain, which the amygdala, which resides in the limbic system, which is really, the heart, so to speak, of our emotional brains, takes over the thinking part of our brain, right here, the prefrontal cortex. And that's a complicated thing that a process that I'm not going to go into, but just think about this, that your brain goes into fight, flight, freeze, before your emotional brain goes into fight, flight, freeze, before your thinking brain can catch it. And so there's a kind of a reflex that can happen for a lot of kids and adults with ADHD. And of course, when someone said, can they do it or are they unable? I think it's a combination. Sometimes as kids get older, there's a choice. And other times they may just not have the emotional executive functioning skills yet to be able to own up to what they did and face the music. So when this happens, when the amygdala kind of takes over and we snap into fight, flight, or freeze, feelings rule the day as adrenaline courses through our bodies, ratcheting up the intensity of our reactions, our words, and our behaviors. And so we need to restabilize by stopping this flood. And how are we going to do this? So we have to stop our own flood first, because we cannot expect our kids to regulate when we are dysregulated. It doesn't happen. And kids have told me this over and over again, that when their parents go off, that's it for them. They absolutely cannot hold it together, and they really kind of lodge into the hypocrisy of it. You're yelling at me, you're waving your arms, and when I yell at you and wave my arms, you get mad and you tell me I need to calm down, and what about when you need to calm down? And you're just off to the races, right? So instead, what we want to do is to slow down our breathing, regulate our heart rate and blood pressure by doing two things. One, practicing in a non-stressful time what we can do to soothe ourselves, and two, start to use language to describe what's going on. Not language that is blaming language or escalating language, but language that's like, I'm very angry right now, I don't like what's happening, we need a time apart. So while it can take seconds for the amygdala to activate the argument or the fleeing or the freezing, it can take up somewhere between like 15 and 20 minutes for the body to recover. Okay, and so from the adrenaline and the cortisol that's racing through the bodies to return to normal levels. So we want to practice self-control for ourselves first, and then assist our kids who are neurodivergent to do the same. A lot of parenting books basically expect that your child can regulate in a way that a child can regulate in a way that your child may not be capable of doing yet, right? Because we know that the ADHD brain matures more slowly in the connectivity of the prefrontal cortex to the rest of the brain, and in some of the areas of executive functioning skills as well. So we want to teach them and learn ourselves how to identify the signs of angry feelings that are building up inside, and what tools you can use, everybody can use, to slow things down. Now I see that there's been many comments here, so let me take a look and see what Facebook has not erased. Okay, let's see. My son really has difficulty falling in line. Oh yeah, the lies, big trigger. Blame on others, low motivation, no empathy, insensitive, narcissistic tendencies, 13-year-old daughter. Okay, so here's the thing. Anybody who's raising a child between the ages of 12 and maybe 16, we can expect that they are very focused on themselves. That is a normal part of adolescent development. Me, 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 me. It's about me. It's about me and how it affects me. It's about me and how I look. It's about me and what others think about me. That is part of what adolescence is about. And adolescence is also part of a process of learning connected independence. So there's the push me away times and there's the pull me to you times. I was just talking with a mother today in a session about her teenage son, and the mother lives abroad and the son is here in the United States in school, and it's hard. You know, they miss each other and they're very connected and close. But what happens is that the mother would give the teenage son advice, which he would then reject and get mad at her for, and then text me and be like, "Can you talk to my mother?" So we had some family sessions, and I also have done a little bit of work alone with the mom and alone with the teenager. And what the mom and I talked about is that it's so hard, really stepping back with older adolescents in particular, and waiting for them to come forward and contact you. So as soon as she stopped calling her child twice a day, guess what happened? He started to call her. Which is, now that doesn't always occur, but it is an interesting thing to think about. What would happen if I step back here and keep my comment to myself and then make myself available for questions? And when are times when kids and often teenagers want to talk to you? Before bed, in the car, or doing an activity with you. So let's see. Lying and profanity. Single mama, zero help. One kid with autism and severe ADHD and anxiety. The other one with severe ODD, very violent. I want to say for those of you who are single mothers, you are amazing. Or single fathers, single parents, single guardians. I bow down to you because you are it. Maybe I hope you have family that can help you, and I hope that you may have other people to give you reprieves, but you're the bottom line, and you are the person who receives all the goodies, and you also receive all the pushback. It's a very intense relationship between a single parent and a child, and many of us who parent, we don't exactly understand what that's about. It's critical for single parents to build into their week some type of self-care. Whatever it is, because otherwise you're walking around with a very empty bucket. There's no water in that bucket. There's just a hole that's taking that, there's just a permanent leak, and then there's no water. So you don't feel like you get depleted. You don't feel like you have things to give. So think about those of you who are single parents right now. What is something you can do? One thing you could do per week, maybe even per day, that would actually put something in that bucket. Because this is the thing that's going to help you be able to step back, to be able to use my STAR program, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Let's see, lying, aggressive outbursts, RAD, okay. Ruth, you don't have enough crackers in a day. I hear ya. We have to move on. We have to feel our emotional part. Yes, we want to feel our emotional part, but what happens is we're in it. And when we're in it so close, we don't have perspective. So we want to be able to zoom out. And for me, the way I zoom out is I have to kind of remove myself a little bit from the situation. Recently, I was visiting my elderly father and my stepmother, and there was this hilarious conversation where I was saying, I'm really interested, I'm starting to work on my next book, which is true, and I want it to be about anxiety and neurodivergence, which is true. And by the way, if anyone wants to talk to me about that topic, please message me, because I'm going to be doing some interviews. And so both my father and my stepmother were like, "Oh, I don't understand people with anxiety. I'm not anxious at all." And I literally had three options. One, laugh hysterically in their faces. Two, basically say, WTF, are you kidding me? You're both so anxious. Every time I talk to you on the phone, at the end of every phone call, you say, be safe. It's crazy. Or go into the kitchen and get a glass of water. And I was so proud of myself because I went into the kitchen and got a glass of water. I was like, yes, yes, I'm doing what I'm teaching. I'm so proud of myself. And my husband actually even noticed. Later, he's like, that was an insane conversation, and you handled it so well. Who knew, right? And so it's really great if you have a partner that they can notice that, or that you can do that for yourself, or that you can come here for this community and say, hey, you know what? Here's an example of when I regulated. So now I'm going to ask you, please put in the chat a time when you regulated yourself, even though it was pretty difficult. Ed says, my son is ADHD. My anger trigger is him openly disrespecting my desire for him to clean up after himself, especially when it comes to using the trash can. Instead, he continues to hide trash under his bed and sofa. He makes more effort to hide the trash than to simply get up and put it in the bin. I totally hear you, Ed, about this. Here's one thing I might suggest in this situation. Instead of being angry at him, to say, look, I noticed that you don't seem to be able to put your trash in the trash can. So every day before we go to bed, we're going to do a 2-minute pickup and just go around the room, and we're each going to see who can pick up the most trash. And maybe we'll earn some points for that towards something that each of us wants to do with the other person, or maybe it's just fun to do, like high five, kind of that idea, first, fastest, biggest, best. 4-year-olds love that, but older kids may not. But we still want to set that up, and when you do this, then you'll get points for something else. Georgia, to be able to do. Let's see, Georgia, sorry, to be able to do okay, move on, and pay the right penalty. Interesting, I want to hear about that. Yes, Ruth, I agree. Many parenting courses do not focus on the needs of children with special needs. And so then you're in a course trying to better yourself and you feel excluded from the club. That's very frustrating. Truth, agree. We have a really close relationship, good communication to explain what we feel, which is our effort. That's great. Trauma can also get in the way of getting to a recovery state. Oh, yes, for sure. Trauma can absolutely get in the way of getting to a recovery state. And if we can, basically pre-game what to do in a situation when you are activated with trauma, to write those solutions down, that will be useful. It's important, in my opinion, to all use the instrument from the doctor and the therapists, all the love that parents can feel, yes. And add all the love. Yes, before bed, and oh my goodness, I'm like going to sleep because I'm done, but it hurts my heart to stifle them at that moment. It is so true. You feel like you want to put little toothpicks in your eyelids because you're just trying to stay awake and listen, and this is when they feel like talking. It can be very challenging. Claire, single mom here, and yes, I am it. So intense and hard, and I owe the responsibility to get it right. My cup does indeed feel empty. Yes, Claire, and here's the thing I want to say to you, to all of you, from deep in my heart. You're not going to get it right all the time. Nobody gets it right all the time. Nobody's perfect. We are imperfectly perfect as humans. So you're going to do some things well, you're going to do some things not as good as you would like, and some things that you just wish you could take back. That's how it goes. And all we can do is model accountability and how we can get back to our own centers for our kids to see. Georgia, for kids who have special needs, ADHD, autism, and more, it's really important for information from science and a mutual help. Janali, I was diagnosed with ADHD in my 40s. I have a son with ASD, but I guess I have my teenage daughter has some ADHD or depression. Lori, just love you and how really real and authentic you are. Lori, thank you. That is so nice. Thank you, Nick. Thank you. I am trying to model the kind of authenticity and accountability for you, because I feel like that's the way to go in this life, right? Paula, daughter with DS and ADHD, son with severe OCD, her self-soothing Techniques are his triggers. That is very, very, very challenging. Can her self-soothing techniques occur in a different room or a different space than he is when you see them happening? Or can you set something up that he's allowed to go somewhere else when it's occurring? Nick, first, fastest, biggest, best. Absolutely. Biggest struggle for us is meal times. Every single one. Mostly not interested in eating, and it takes so long to get a decent amount of food in my kiddo. I dread every meal. Oh, Kate, I understand this. I'm going to say to you, how can you gamify dinner? Can you play actually like a game or two, or tell a story? Can you, let them figure out what it is that they like to eat? Maybe they only like to eat a few things, and so it's hard for them. A lot of times kids with ADHD, dinner is kind of boring. It's like you sit there, you eat the food, I'm not that interested in the food, whatever. Could they do an activity? Like, could you play cards while you have dinner? And each time there's a turn, you take a bite of food or something like that. Thank you, Lori. Gabrielle, at home we do the sticker activation for goals when he comes home to do the checklist bit on his ADHD. We never use the verbiage good day or bad day. Thank you. Love that. But his teacher really did and laid into him on with bad day. So now, oh my God, something that was working really well has a focus of an air of anxiety. The school year is starting, and I'm seeing if we should do the sticker thing again. All right, I'm going to encourage you to sit down with that, whoever the teacher is, and say, we do not use good and bad days. We use days that went well and days that could have gone better. That's it. Because the bad day thing actually does start to create anxiety, and it's kind of what happens is it's kind of like the foundation where anxiety lives. Let's see, car rides when they have no escape. Yeah, so I think the thing to do on the car rides is to try to set them up either with a movie that they're willing to watch if it's a long car ride, or separate activities, music. Each one can pick something they want to listen to. Car rides are real challenges, and I think it can help if you take little breaks along the way for longer car rides as well. I mean, kids just can't sit in the car that long. And, I've had kids like throw shoes at the driver, the parent, or, bother their siblings. And, the one parent, the father, stopped the car and yelled at the kid. And the kid said, what I really wanted was a hug, because I hated being in the car. I was feeling like I was going to die. I couldn't breathe. And then you just got angry with me. Good feeding therapy, yes. Difficult to balance ADHD and the dopamine. Yeah, he goes overboard if it's entertaining. Okay, so let's try, let's talk a little bit about my STAR approach. So my STAR approach is that instead of being surprised every time, emotions heat up and improvising what you're going to do, you're going to actually rely on a plan. And I call this plan STAR because it's stop, think, act, recover. And it's good for us to do as an adult, and it's good for us to do as a family. So when you call for that pause in the action, that stop, that's the first thing that for many of us that is the hardest step in your STAR strategy. How are you going to be able to do that and not activate things, right? So we're going to have to manage ourselves before we manage our kids. So again, what is something you can do when you're triggered, when you're upset, when you're angry, where you can kind of pull yourself together? Some people, including myself, I like to go to the bathroom. I wash my hands and I talk to myself in the third person. Sharon, I say, you can do this. You've been in a similar situation. You've got this. That's exactly what I said when I went into the kitchen and got a glass of water. Wow, this is absurd. And you know what? You've been here before. This is not the first time these two people were absurd. Drink your water, get grounded, and then, act as if you never had that conversation, which is exactly what I did. So What is going to help you really kind of slow it down? Because when you can slow down your reactivity, you'll be able to deal with whatever's happening on the other side of the door. So this stop is the first step in recalibration. And it really relies on a predetermined time apart. A time apart is not a timeout. A timeout is you've done something wrong, go take a timeout. It's kind of a punishment model. A time apart is different because we're all going to separate and recalibrate and come back together. And so discuss what kind of signal will begin the process. It could be something like as simple as this, time apart, everybody. And what types of self-soothing activities people will do to settle down. Make a list of these, put them on the refrigerator. If your kids can't read yet, use pictures. Younger children may prefer being with you to help them regulate. Sit on the sofa, hug or read a story or play a card game. That's a challenge if you really are like have that steam coming out of your ears. But we want to rise above that steam. We are the adult. Tweens and teens may be happier just to go to their room and listen to music. Some kids who are kind of more in the 9, 10, 11 age range might want to go to their room and play with Lego or some other activity. In a time apart, nobody is in trouble. And this is really important. It's just that things got heated and a reset was in order. And the reset should be, depending on the age of your children. Younger children, maybe it's 10 minutes. Older children who can handle a longer time, maybe it's 15 or even 20. And when it goes off, then you're ready to come back together for the think phase. Now, this is a time when you listen, really listen to what your child or teen is telling you. You ask them to maybe factually review what happened if they can without getting reactivated, and a lot of kids can't. What would you have liked to have seen happen in that situation? That's what I like to start with. What could you have done differently to make that happen? What would you have liked to have seen me do differently? And it might be a time to share other sorts of naming their feelings or observations, thinking like a scientist. And reflect back what you hear them say. We are not interpreting here. Maybe you want to offer an observation about something. Well, what I noticed is, something, you did something and your sister did something, and then soon you were like wrestling on the ground. That's what I noticed. But we're not teaching here. We're not arguing about whose truth is correct. You may see things differently. That's fine. In fact, that happens in relationships. You see things one way. You're like, I know that I'm right. And then your partner's like, oh, I know that I'm right. And you know what? No, actually, you can both be right and not agree. And that's okay. And that's a really hard pill to swallow for people, but it's true. So now we want to figure out what is the next right thing to do. How are we going to move forward? Everybody is focusing on figuring this out, whether it's an apology that's sincere, making amends, cleaning up a mess, or agreeing to disagree. We're going to collaborate together on identifying the next logical step, and then we're going to pivot toward it. This is ACT. This is the ACT part of the star. And this is when you do what you agreed to do. So you're moving forward with an action that's called for now. You're not lecturing them about what they did wrong. You're not disciplining them. You're not explaining the future pitfalls of whatever, ineffective choice they made. Maybe there's a consequence that's involved. Like, if you drink my hard cider when I go out and then you kind of lie about it, I guess that means that Dad and I will be staying home for the next 4 weekends, and you will be home for one of those weekends with us. People can come over, but we're going to be here. But we're not going to discuss that consequence then. Let them sit with something for a while. that's not a bad thing. There's everything right with waiting and letting you and your kids reflect on what happens so that you're not doing a knee-jerk kind of claim about this, that, or the other, and they're not doing it either. So this leads to recovery. So we've just moving on in the way that we talked about, and what we're going to do here is to stay in that activity until things return to normalcy. And I realize that we're heading towards, heading towards the end. We're not at the end, and I didn't share my downloadable with you, so it's here right now, and for you to get, which outlines this process. So we're going to recover. So maybe several hours later, or maybe the next day, you can find a quiet moment and talk about what lessons can be gleaned from that incident. You always want to ask your child or teen what they think they might have learned or what they could do differently, and then you might want to share your ideas. So that is the STAR method. So let's see what people are saying here. I'd like to see that. So let's see. We'll try eating at every turn. We struggle when screen time is up, so we want to plan for that struggle. So this is part of what I'm talking about, and I talk about this in the worksheet that I just gave you, and I talk about this a lot in my book, What Your ADHD Child Wishes You Knew, and in my blog. So I encourage you to follow me, and you can easily follow me when you sign up for this downloadable. Let's see. Ebony says, it's difficult regardless of marital status. It's lonely. You're doing a great job. Yes. STAR. Nick says, stop, think, act, recover. Thank you, Nick, for writing that down for people. ODD is very difficult to deal with. I have talked about this before. I'm happy to do another session on what to do when nothing works. We'll put that in the calendar in the near future. You can watch this later on the replay here on Attitude Magazine or on my own YouTube. Yes, maybe someone can come to the house so you can get out for your mental health. Thank you. Nick, ask your child what they think they have learned. Thank you, Nick, for writing that down. So I'm wondering if anyone has any comments or questions about how they can use the STAR method in their family, or what obstacles they may feel like they are going to face within themselves, or perhaps with their kids. So let's take a minute now. Ebony, that is great. I'm so glad to hear that. Celia, stop, time apart, not punishment, take a break, think, yes, yes. Okay, that's great, and that's all in the handout that you can just click and get. It's very helpful. Anybody else, does anybody have any comments or questions like, oh, well, Dr. Saline, this sounds really good, but, I don't know, like, I feel like I'm going to get stuck here. Or, part of the problem for me, Dr. Sharon, is like, when I'm triggered, it's like the switch flips for me because I have my own ADHD, and it's hard for me to kind of regulate. Does anyone struggle with that themselves? And how do we get our kids to do something that's hard for us to do as adults? That's an ongoing process, and I would encourage you to start small. Brittany says, how do you handle a meltdown when you're trying to start the STAR method? So what we do is we don't start the STAR method in the middle of a meltdown. We have a family meeting, or 2 or 3, where we say, you know what, it's not working. I'm yelling at you, you're yelling at me, we're both unhappy. What I would like to be able to do is to have a plan for us to deal with these big feelings that come up. And what I just learned about is something called STAR. So let me explain it to you, and let's figure out how we can use that in our family. Let's see. Yes. Yep, I have ADHD, and so I'm reactive. Yes. My biggest obstacle is my unregulated husband. He, let's see. hold on a second, I'm trying. My biggest obstacle is my unregulated husband. He's traumatized and triggered easily. That's something that maybe you guys could work on together if you could find a coach or, really a couples therapist to help you figure out how to navigate it, because I would imagine for your husband it doesn't feel good to be triggered and traumatized in situations, and he would like to offer something but isn't sure what. So this would be a great thing to talk about with a clinician. Co-regulation. Yes, exactly, Tasha. What we're talking about is co-regulation. You regulate yourself and then you help your kids regulate. Yes, start ahead of time and practice. So maybe you're only going to practice the timeout part. That's where you're going to start. You're going to call the time apart. Excuse me, I said time out. Ah! I didn't mean it. I meant time apart. I'm sorry. It's just so, this kind of thing is so easily, connected to time out. So I apologize. I meant time apart. Oy. So sorry. When you have children, one who's neurodivergent and one who's not, you do it for the whole family. Everybody can benefit from this. People who are neurotypical and those who are neurodivergent. It's tricky not to go into punishment mode. Yes, was what we saw our parents do when we were kids. Oh yeah, in my house for my parents it was my way or the highway. You don't do what I ask, boom, you're punished. But it is really important not to go there right away, because your generation of parents and this generation of kids want something different and really expect something different. Nick, Dr. Sharon, how do you feel about kids spending time with babysitters, grandparents, neighbors, especially as they get into their teen years, compared with spending so much time with us, their parents? Well, I do really subscribe to it takes a village, as long as the people in the village understand neurodiversity. If those people don't understand neurodiversity and will be critical, blaming, judgmental, and shaming, then that's not a great idea. But if they really like your child and they want to understand and spend time with them and are interested in things that interest your child, that's fantastic. Go for it. My obstacle is my son, and I think my granddaughter should not act in a certain way. They are very stuck. Michelle, one of the hardest things about being a parent of an adult is, kind of letting go. Because we see them doing things that we think to ourselves, oh no, I'm not sure how that's going to work out, or it doesn't work out well, and you're thinking, I had a feeling that was going to happen. But we ask, are you interested in some feedback? And if they say no, zip it. My dear friend Roz, she's in her 80s, she's best family therapist I know, and dear mentor of mine. She says, open arms and zipped mouth. That's where you start with adult children, because you want them to be able to feel like they can come to you when they're struggling, not that there's a whole lot of criticism coming from you about what they're doing. Nicole, what do you suggest when you try to separate and have some space to calm down and kids follow you? Well, this is what I like about the bathroom option, because kids want to follow you into the bathroom, but they also understand that people go to the bathroom by themselves. Not everybody does, but a lot of people do. And so that's, you're going to say, look, I need to be in the bathroom by myself. You can wait outside. I will tell you that I literally have had children, mine and those of my clients, sit outside the bathroom door waiting for a parent person to come out. That's okay. You're in there, you just ignore it. They're talking to you, or maybe they're yelling at you. You've got to really, maybe turn your phone on and listen to some white noise or a song that you like, something that can help you bring it down. Thank you, Laura. We want to do better and practice and teach good skills. That's why you're here. Yes! And congratulate yourself. Pat yourself on the back. Bravo! You're here and we're having this conversation, and that is fantastic. And we will be back in 2 weeks on the, today is the 21st, so it'll be the first Friday of August, I believe, and I will see you here at 4 p.m. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful weekend. And be sure you download my gift to you. It goes over everything that we talked about today. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you in a few weeks. Bye.